One of my favorite things about presidential history are the audio recordings of conversations presidents had in private. It allows a view into the mind of former presidents that is so personal and so eye-catching. While presidents before maintained journals, there's something about writing that feels edited in a way. You can think about what you'll say before you write it. Writing also censors you. You wouldn't use expletives or casual language in a letter, but audibly you would. In addition to that, at a certain point, these presidents knew that once they are gone, their journal would probably be read by people. And with that comes a certain human desire to rewrite your own history and to be the hero of your own story. While audio recordings capture presidents in the moment with their guard down and no need to stick to the script. This is going to be a long video on something I think is so cool, and it's a topic that is finally relevant because President Trump just did 18 interviews with Bob Woodward with all of them recorded, but that is another video for another time. If you like the video or like presidential recordings as much as I do, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe. Let's go back to tape recordings. From 1940 to 1973, 6 consecutive American presidents secretly taped thousands of their meetings and telephone conversations. From Franklin Delano Roosevelt, whose infrequent recordings yielded around only 8 hours of tape material, to Richard Nixon, whose voice-activated system captured 3,400 hours of discussion. These conversations provide an extraordinary window into the workings of the White House during some of the most consequential, most defining, and most important moments in American history. Roosevelt began the practice of recording presidential conversations by taping his press conferences during the summer of 1940. It was the beginning of a larger moment in American history. FDR was maneuvering to support Britain behind Nazi victories in Western Europe and continued Japanese thrusts in Asia, while embarking on something unheard of, running for a third presidential term. The tapes he made from August through November 1940 reveal an unscripted president considering the challenges of the day and reflect his desire for an accurate account of what transpired in his meetings with journalists. FDR was angered at being misquoted in early 1939. Reporters had leaked conversations between him and senators that portrayed his position towards the emerging threat of Germany as the American frontier is on the Rhine. In other words, the media reported that FDR was pledging, at least in private, not to allow Germany to get beyond its borders, thereby making it likely he would commit America to war. FDR lashed out at the press after it was reported saying that some boob got that off. As a result, FDR began recording his press conferences until he was reelected and then he stopped. I will be playing some of these presidential tapes for you, but FDR's secret audio recordings sound like secret audio recordings from 1940, so just imagine a man trying to talk through a blender. FDR's successor, Harry Truman, only recorded 10 hours of conversations. These tapes are pretty unremarkable. They're hard to make out and don't really revolve around any important events such as the atomic bomb, his re-election, or the Korean War. The inconsistency of these recordings and the lack of quality is a real disappointment. Truman's presidency is kind of overlooked. People know of him as the guy who dropped the atomic bombs, but Roosevelt often gets credit for ending World War II. Perhaps this is fair because he did die a month before Nazi Germany surrendered. However, the recovery of Europe and Japan through the Marshall Plan was instituted by Truman, which ushered in an age of American economic dominance. He also made the very difficult decision that would change human history forever: dropping the atomic bombs. Having recordings of these moments would be eye-opening. There are books and journals out there detailing the moments before Truman ordered the bomb to be dropped, but hearing it would add another layer of context that text typically leaves out. Knowing if Truman took a heavy sigh before ordering the bombing, or if he second-guessed himself verbally, or if he was so gun-ho about the order, could really change our perceptions on the event that followed, and give us a glimpse into the inner workings of one of the most important decisions ever made. His successor, Dwight B. Eisenhower, recorded just 15 hours of tape. Like Roosevelt, Eisenhower wanted a record of what was said in the Oval Office as a form of protection, particularly when holding discussions on sensitive matters that could leak to the press or with people he didn't particularly trust. We'll listen to one of these tapes briefly. This tape is from January 19th, 1955. In the meeting is Representative Francis Bolton from Ohio and James C. Haggerty, Eisenhower's press secretary.
But that I don't know. There's a good question. And the thing that...
Well, I know you were there, you could have been a junior.
That is no good. What's the use? I was 20 years younger, that was different.
Yeah.
But I'm not.
You got a lot of seniority, yeah.
Yes. And I should use. And...
As you can tell, secret recorder microphones still weren't very good, but hey, it's something. Now we get to Kennedy. Kennedy was 43 years old when sworn in, so he knows how to use a tape recorder. A secret tape recorder. He recorded 260 hours of conversation. Kennedy was president for 2 years, but every step of the way was a challenge. He spent his 35 months in the White House stumbling from crisis to fiasco. His presidency is a roller coaster of extreme highs and extreme lows. His first year was a disaster. The Bay of Pigs invasion of communist Cuba was only the first in a series of failed efforts to undo Fidel Castro's regime. His 1961 summit meeting in Vienna with Khrushchev left him humiliated on the global stage. 1 year later, his most important and most famous achievement is his management of the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962. Most of his military advisors believed the United States should bomb the missile pads that the Soviet Union was stationing in Cuba. Kennedy, aware of the danger of escalating the crisis, instead ordered a blockade of Soviet ships. Let's listen in on the meeting with the Joint Chief of Staffs.
Last month I said we weren't going to. Last month I should have said that we don't care, but when I said we're not going to, and then they go ahead and do it, and then we do nothing, then I would think that our risks increase.
Well, I would just say one thing and then turn it over to General LeMay. We recognize all these things, Mr. President, but I think we'd all be unanimous in saying that really our strength in Berlin, our strength any place in the world, is the credibility of our response under certain conditions. And if we don't respond here in Cuba, we think the credibility of our response in Berlin is right.
President Kennedy then used his recorder to summarize the various stances in his cabinet on what action should be used in Cuba.
During the course of the day, opinions had obviously switched from the advantages of a first strike on the missile sites and on Cuban aviation to a blockade. Dean Atchison, with whom I talked this afternoon, stated, while he was uncertain about any of the courses, favored the first strike as being less likely to produce, being most likely to achieve our result and less likely to cause an extreme Soviet reaction. That strikes take place just against the missile sites. When I saw Robert Lovett later after talking to Gromyko, he was not convinced that any action was desirable. He felt that the first strike would be very destructive to our alliances. The Soviets would inevitably bring about a reprisal, that we would be blamed for it, and that particularly if the reprisal was to seize Berlin, that we'd be regarded as having brought about the loss of Berlin with inadequate provocation, they having lived with these intermediate range ballistic missiles for years.
Being president is a very unique position. 107 billion people have been born and died in the history of the entire world. But only 45 people have ever been president. It's a very unique experience, and there really isn't a guide on how to be a good president. So President Kennedy called both President Eisenhower, who was a general in World War II, and President Truman, who dropped the atomic bomb, to discuss the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Well, I thank you for telling me, and I will, personally, I think they're really making the only move you can.
Yeah, it's tough to, as I say, we will, I don't know, we may get into the invasion business before many days are out,
yeah.
but
Well, of course, the military standpoint, that's a clean-cut thing to do now.
That's right.
Because you've made up your mind, you've got to get rid of this thing.
Right.
Well, the only real way to get rid of it, of course, is the other thing. But if having to be concerned with world opinion
and Berlin.
Of others, why you got to do a little slower.
Well, Berlin is the, I suppose that it may be what they're going to try to trade off.
They might, but I personally, I just don't quite go along, with that thinking, Mr. President. My idea is this. The damn Soviets will do whatever they want, what they figure is good for them.
Yeah.
And I don't believe they relate one situation with another. That's what they find out they can do here and there and the other place.
Yeah.
And we're already standing at the unit with NATO that if they go into Berlin, that's all of it.
Right.
That means they've got to look out that they don't get a terrific blow themselves.
Right.
And I don't, it might be, I could be all wrong, but my own conviction is that you will not find a great deal of relationship between the two.
Let me ask.
They'll try to make it that way.
General, what about if the Soviet Union, Khrushchev announces tomorrow, which I think he will, that if we attack Cuba, that it's going to be nuclear war. And what's your judgment as to the chances they'll fire these things off if we invade Cuba?
I don't believe a bit.
You don't think they will? In other words, you would take that risk if the situation seemed desirable.
As a matter of fact, what can you do?
Uh-huh.
If this thing is such a serious thing here on our flank that we're going to be uneasy, and we know what this thing's happening now. All right, you got to use something.
Right.
Something may make these people shoot them off. I just don't believe this will.
Yeah, all right.
In any event, of course, I'll say this. I'd want to keep my own people very alert.
Yeah. No, hang on tight.
Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot, General.
All right, thanks.
All right.
A lot of complaints about Kennedy from people at the time was that he was inexperienced and naive. While those critics aren't alive to see that he was actually calling for advice from people with experience, perhaps that may have softened their critiques. It's important to note that both President Truman and President Eisenhower publicly attacked and disliked President Kennedy. However, when the president called, they answered. Being able to put aside differences for the sake of the country seems like an obviously good thing, and something fairly common in that part of American history. But it is something that is quite foreign in the modern day.
Hello?
Hello, this is Harry Truman.
Hello, how are you, Mr. President?
Well, I'm all right, and I'm just pleased to death the way these things came out.
Well, we'll just stay at it, and I just wanted to bring you up to date on it. We got a letter from him on Friday night, which was rather conciliatory on these withdrawals. Then on Saturday morning, 12 hours after the other letters received, we got this entirely different letter about the missile bases in Turkey.
That's the way they do things.
Then, then we rejected that. Then they came back with and accepted the earlier proposals. So I think we're going to have a lot of difficulties, but at least we're making some progress about getting these missiles out of there. And in addition, I think that Khrushchev's had some difficulties in maintaining his position. My judgment is that it's going to make things tougher in Berlin, because the fact he's had something of a setback in Cuba is going to make him
That's right.
rougher in Berlin. But at least it's a little better than it was a couple of days ago.
Well, you're on the right track, and you just keep after them. That's the language they understand, just what you give them.
All right, good.
They've been asking me for comments, and I said the President of the United States, the only man who can comment on it.
All right. Okay. Good. Take care. I'll be in touch with you.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
I
President.
certainly appreciate your call.
Oh, thank you, Mr. President. Bye-bye.
President Kennedy got the ball rolling on civil rights. President Kennedy enforced the desegregation of universities. The most popular instance during his presidency would be James Meredith in the University of Mississippi. Federal courts ordered that Meredith should be allowed entry into the University of Mississippi. However, the governor, Ross Barnett, wanted him removed. Kennedy utilized the National Guard and U.S. Marshals to enforce the order. A riot broke out when Meredith showed up to be admitted. Here's a phone call between Governor Barnett and President Kennedy. As the call goes on, you can hear Kennedy become more and more irritated and frustrated with the governor.
The commissioner of the Highway Patrol to order every man he's got.
Yeah. And how long is that going to take? We don't want somebody...
Well, I haven't been able to locate him. Here's what happened. He went to the doctor's office with this man that was hurt.
Yeah.
And I finally located him there after you told me to have him to get more people, don't you see, if he needed them.
Yeah.
And he thought then that the 50 he had would be sufficient.
Yeah.
But I told him by all means to order out everyone he had if he needed it.
Yeah.
And I'm certainly trying in every way.
We can't consider moving Meredith as long as there's a riot outside, because he wouldn't be safe.
Sir?
We couldn't consider moving Meredith if we haven't been able to restore order outside. That's the problem, Governor.
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do, Mr. President.
Yeah.
I'll go up there myself.
Well, now, how long will it take you to get there?
And I'll get a microphone and tell them that you have agreed to be removed.
No, wait a minute. Wait a minute, Governor. Now, how long is it going to take you to get up there?
About an hour.
Now, I tell you what, if you want to go up there, then you call me from up there, and then we'll decide what we're going to do before you make any speeches about it.
Well, all right.
There's no sense in that.
Whatever if you'd offer.
See, we got an hour to go, and that's not, we may not have an hour, but it won't take you an hour to get up there.
This man has just died.
Did he die?
Yes.
Which one, state police?
That's state policeman.
Yeah. Well, you see, we got to get order up there, and that's what we thought we were going to have.
President, please, why don't you, can't you give an order to try to remove me?
How can I remove him, Governor, when there's a riot in the street, and he may step out of that building and something happen to him? I can't remove him under those conditions. Let's get order up there, then we can do something about Meredith.
We can surround it with plenty of officials.
Well, we've got to get somebody up there now to get order and stop the firing and the shooting. Then you and I will talk on the phone about Meredith. But first, we got to get order.
I'll call and tell them to get every official they can.
That's right. Then you and I will talk when they've got the building, when they've got order there. Then you and I'll talk about what's the best thing to do with Meriden.
All right, then.
Thank you.
All right.
I've talked a lot about the importance of these tapes, and I do believe they are important. I think, however, in the case of President Kennedy, these tapes of his might be the most important of any of the presidents who actually taped their conversations. President Kennedy was assassinated 2 years into his presidency. In just 2 years, so much had happened, and the man behind all of it couldn't even tell his side of it. His right-hand man throughout all of it, his brother Robert, was assassinated 5 years after him. Without these tapes, we may never know President Kennedy's stance on a lot of things, or how he handled a lot of issues. I have listened to a lot of Kennedy tapes while doing research for this video, and I feel I'd be doing a disservice if I didn't play for you my favorite call of Kennedy's. Despite riots happening in universities, a failed invasion of Cuba, and the Cuban Missile Crisis, I have never heard Kennedy more angry than this call he had with the Air Force about a furniture purchase. To give a bit more background before we play it, President Kennedy was horrified to open the paper one day and see a photograph of a Navy aide standing next to an expensive new naval project, a hospital bedroom that had been built at a base on Cape Cod to be ready in case the First Lady Jackie Kennedy went into labor with their son, Patrick Kennedy. Here's the call.
General? Yes, sir. That Air Force has caused itself more grief with that silly bastard. Did you see the post this morning?
Yes, sir. I'm looking.
See that fellow's picture by the bed?
Yes, sir.
And you see that furniture they bought from Jordan Marsh? What the hell do they let the reporters in there for? Are they crazy up there? Now you know what's going to do. Any congressman's going to get up and say, Christ, if they can throw $5,000 away on this, let's cut them another $1 billion. You just sank the Air Force budget. You're crazy up there. Are they crazy? That silly bastard with his picture next to the bed?
Sir, I'm appalled, but,
Well, I'm appalled, too. Now, the thing of the matter is, I'm going to get that furniture. I've just told Sylvester, and you can talk to him. I want to find out if we pay for that furniture, because I want it to go back to Jordan Marsh's.
all right, sir.
Then I want that fella's incompetent who had his picture taken next to Mrs. Kennedy's bed, if that's what it is. I mean, he's a silly bastard. I wouldn't have him running a cat house. And that Colonel Carlson, who let in Larry Newman and those reporters, is he crazy too? Christ, they're not all incompetent. Is that the way they're throwing money around over there? You better look into it, and especially when you told me that they hadn't spent a cent.
Well, sir, this is obviously...
Well, this is obviously a fuck-up.
That's
okay.
right. That's right.
Right.
After President Kennedy was assassinated, his vice president Lyndon Johnson became president. Lyndon Johnson has been considered the best president this country has had since FDR. Johnson's administration passed an unprecedented amount of legislation, much of it designed to protect the environment and Americans' quality of life. President Johnson's administration also extended the New Deal of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, including aid to education, Head Start, Medicare, and Medicaid, programs that are still significant today and that command bipartisan support for their effectiveness. His programs kept millions of Americans out of poverty, gave others basic health care, and fought for and passed fundamental rights of citizenship for minorities. But with all presidents, he had a dark spot in his history: the Vietnam War and the chaos in the United States that followed. Lyndon Johnson recorded 800 hours of tape through his 5 years in office. These tapes that presidents recorded revealed so much about them, but they do different things for the ones with coherent recordings. Kennedy's tapes were important for sustaining his legacy and for knowing how some of the most important decisions in American history were decided. It also gave us a window into what his presidency could have been. While Johnson's recordings give us some insight into the art of the deal, Johnson knew his way around Washington. He had been a congressman for 12 years before becoming a senator. Once he became a senator, he had made his way through the US Senate, jumping from seniority spot to when he eventually became the Senate Majority Leader. He would hold that position until 1961 when he became Kennedy's VP. These calls reveal how Johnson was able to push through so much legislation in only 5 years and how he handled a country that was falling apart left and right. His very first recorded call happens a few hours after President Kennedy is killed. The first call is to Kennedy's mother, Rose.
Hello?
Yes, Mrs. Kennedy, I have Mr. Johnson for you here.
Yes, thank you.
Miss Kennedy?
Yes. Yes, Mr. President. Yes.
I wish to God there was something that I could do, and I wanted to tell you that we were grieving with you.
Yes, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I know you love Jack and he loves you.
Miss Kennedy, we feel like we just had a...
Yes. All right.
We're glad that the nation had a son
Yes.
How much it did.
Yes, well, thank you, Lady Bird. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Yes.
Love and prayers to all of you.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
If you're thinking, hey, that call was kind of awkward, you're not alone. The feud between the Kennedys and LBJ spans 20 years and involves Shakespeare, conspiracy theories, and mutual contempt. It's a long story for another time. The next very important call of Lyndon B. Johnson's is to Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Reverend King and President Johnson had many calls regarding the civil rights movement. The call you're about to hear is Johnson and King discussing strategy for getting the Voting Rights Act passed. You're going to notice on the call that you can't hear King at all, and that's how the majority of Johnson's calls went. He doesn't let anyone else get a word in.
I think it's very important that we not to say that we're doing this and we not do it just because it's Negroes or whites, but we take the position that every person born in this country, when he reaches a certain age, that he have a right to vote, just like he has a right to fight, and that we just extend it, whether it's a Negro, whether it's a Mexican, or who it is. And number two, I think that we don't want special privilege for anybody. We want equality for all, and we can stand on that principle. But I think if you can contribute a great deal by getting your leaders and you yourself taking very simple examples of discrimination, where a man's got to memorize Longfellow, whether he's got to quote the first 10 amendments, or he's got to tell you what Amendment 15, 16, 17 is, and then ask them if they know, and show what happens. And some people don't have to do that, but when a Negro comes in, he's got to do it. And if we can just repeat and repeat and repeat, I don't want to follow Hitler, but he had an idea that if you just take a simple thing and repeat it often enough, even if it wasn't true, why, people accept it. Well, now this is true, and if you can find the worst condition that you run into in Alabama, Mississippi, or Louisiana, or South Carolina, where, well, I think one of the worst I ever heard of is the president of the school at Tuskegee, or the head of the government department there, or something, being denied the right to cast a vote. And if you just take that one illustration and get it on radio and get it on television and get it on in the pulpits, get it in the meetings, get it every place you can, pretty soon the fellow that didn't do anything but drive a tractor, he'll say, well, that's not right, that's not fair. And then that will help us on what we're going to shove through in the end. You're exactly right about that. And if we do that, we'll break through it'll be the greatest breakthrough of anything, not even except in this 64 Act. I think the greatest achievement of my administration, I think the greatest achievement in foreign policy, I said to a group yesterday, was the passage of the 1964 Civil Rights Act. But I think this will be bigger, because it'll do things that even that 64 Act couldn't do.
A lot happened between 1964 and 1968, but these 2 years are massive in terms of their impact. Here's a call from April 5th, 1968 between the mayor of Atlanta, Ivan Allen, and President Johnson regarding the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. In the call, they discuss the riots happening immediately after King's death and Johnson's call to Coretta Scott King, as well as MLK's legacy.
Ready, sir?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr.
I want to thank you for your very fine statement that you made so promptly, sir.
Thank you, Mayor.
We're doing everything we can. We have a very heavy rainstorm here in Atlanta, and it's preventing any disorder at the present time. We've been through these situations before. I think that we can cope with them. I'll do everything I can to hold the house in order here, sir.
Well, you're mighty good, and I have great confidence in you, and I know that you're right on top of it. I called Miss King.
I was with Miss King when you called.
Well,
I accompanied her to the airport where we heard of Dr. King's death and then went home with her. And Miss Allen was with me, and we've done everything we possibly could, sir. Martin was my close personal friend. I had great respect and admiration for him, sir.
Well, you've done a great job there, and I hope you'll let me know anything, any suggestions you have. We have a little problem in Durham, and we have one here in Washington. They're moving around. We don't know the extent of it, don't know how serious it's going to be, but they have 2,000 or 3,000 people gathered. And I was due to out Honolulu in the morning, but I decided I'd wait till in the morning and take a look at it and see what to do. Do you have any suggestions as to anything else that I ought to do?
Mr. President, I think you've taken exactly the right steps, son, and I'm following the same pattern here, son. I'm just delighted that you're running the show, son.
Well, you're wonderful to call me and stay in touch with me, and please know that I'm very grateful for your whole attitude.
It was only 2 months later that Senator Robert Kennedy was killed while running for president. This is a condolence call to Ted Sorensen, Stephen Smith, and Edward Kennedy. To give some context to who these people are, Sorensen had worked with John F. Kennedy nearly his entire life as a speechwriter, and he was extremely close to the Kennedy family. Stephen Smith was a brother-in-law to Robert Kennedy. Edward Kennedy is Ted Kennedy. He's a brother to both John F. Kennedy and Robert F. Kennedy, and was a senator for nearly 50 years.
Ted, we're very grieved, and I don't know who to talk to, but I wanted to call you and tell you that our prayers are with you, and I hope that you will take appropriate action to convey that information to the family that you might be in contact with. It's not a problem. Of course I will. I don't want to be, I know they'd all want to talk, but I don't want to be bothering them. Second, we have asked that a detail be placed with each presidential candidate. We don't have any authority to do it, but I thought we ought to, and we'll have the families covered here, and the candidates wherever they are. We had asked confidentially the Congress to do that. We didn't want to attract attention to it by a lot of publicity to get every crackpot taken care of. We'd asked them to put legislation on the appropriation bill, and they had the hearings, and they were agreeable to doing it. They're going to report the bill next week. It's legislation on appropriation bill. We'd have a problem, so we were going ahead to do it, and I just went ahead and took this action. I would like for somebody, whoever's watching the children and things, to know that we're not trying to spy on them, but there will be some MPs. I've asked the Defense Department, and the Secret Service doesn't have enough people. There'll be a Secret Service people in charge, but they'll have under them some MPs and other police, whoever they want to call on.
In October of 1968, Lyndon B. Johnson held a conference call with all three presidential candidates, Humphrey, Nixon, and Wallace. He briefed them on his plan for Vietnam. This information was important to give to candidates to ensure they did not signal or say otherwise on the debate stage or during a speech, as that could cause Johnson's plan to fall apart. I have no idea why he's yelling, though.
This is in absolute confidence, because any statement or any speeches or any comments at this time referring to the substance of these matters will be injurious to your country. I don't think there's any question about that. The government's position is going to be this. We are willing to stop the bombing when it will not cost us men's lives, when the government of South Vietnam can be a party to the negotiations, and when they will not abuse the DMZ and not shell the cities. Now, we do not have to get a firm contract on all of these three things, but I do have to have good reason to believe that it won't be on again, off again, plan again, that I won't have to stop the bombing one day and start it the next. Now, obviously, they can deceive me, and we know that in dealing with the communists, that they frequently do that. We have had a good many experiences at that right in these negotiations. But what I called you for was to say in substance this. Our position has not changed. I do not plan to see it change. I have not issued any such orders. I will talk to each of you before I do, and all of you on an equal basis. I know you don't want to play politics with your country, I'm trying to tell you what my judgment is about how not to play politics with it. And I know all of you want peace at the earliest possible moment, and I would just express the hope that you be awfully sure what you're talking about before you get into the intricacies of these negotiations. Over. Now, I'll be glad to have any comment any of you want to make or answer any question.
No comment, Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Yep. Well, as you know, this is consistent with what my position has been all along. I've made it very clear that I will make no statement that would undercut the negotiation. So we'll just stay right on there and hope that this thing works out.
George, are you on?
Yes, sir, Mr. President, and of course, that's my position all along, too, is the position you stated, yes, sir. And I agree with you that we shouldn't play any politics with this matter so that it might foul up the negotiations in any manner.
On a lighter note, here's Johnson discussing his struggles with dessert and weight gain as president. This is a very humanizing conversation.
I've just eaten my head off. I can't button my britches. I'm craving all the time. The stuff I get just won't hold me. And I used to hear Tom Miller, Mayor Austin, say whenever he had troubles, he had to eat it off. And I guess everybody does. So what I asked Paul to do is get them to make me the absolutely lowest calorie dessert they could. Now, I'm not sure that tapioca is. I gain on it, and I love it. But anyway, I ought to have some change. The thing that I can eat next that seems to be bulky is Jello. Get some kind of Jello that doesn't have too many calories, and get me some dyed fruit to put in it. Now, I think they have done it. If they have, and there's some in the icebox, get somebody to run over and get it. I need some kind of dessert. If not, bring me the tapioca. I just had one little cup of cold bouillon that wasn't fit to eat. Came from downstairs, and it was lukewarm, nauseatingly warm. So I've got to eat something before I get to work here, and I can't take my nap. And tell them to bring me the bouillon.
All right, so now, the dessert. Are you planning to go over to Lucy's party?
Should I go?
Yes, sir. And it's on now.
Well, how long is it going to last?
I don't think more than until 4 o'clock.
All right. Well, I guess I'll walk on over there now. Okay, I'll go over and I'll get it myself.
All right,
you
sir.
Think about the diet, though, and think about what you will give for lunch. Maybe I'll start eating here.
All right.
Every president's secret audio tapes have made them look better, except one. And his name is Richard Nixon. He is the king of secret recordings. Nixon recorded nearly 3,400 hours of conversation. That's 147 days of audio. To put that in context, if you started listening to the Nixon tapes for 12 hours a day on the day President Trump declared a national emergency over COVID-19, you would not be done listening until December 27th, 2020. Nixon's audio recordings expose his worst qualities. Here's a call between President Nixon and Governor Reagan using a racial slur.
And last night, I tell you, to watch that thing on television as I did, to see those monkeys from those African countries, damn them, they're still uncomfortable wearing shoes.
Well, and then the tail wags the dog there, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The tail wags the dog.
That's just the tip of the iceberg, though. Nixon's tapes would ultimately expose his criminal enterprise. Here is Nixon instructing the WaterGate scandal. I'm not going to play the whole tape for Nixon on any of these because they are long and the quality isn't always that great.
And that it's got to be to Helms and, what's his name? Walters. And the proposal would be that Erwin and I call in. All right, fine. And say,
The next tape you're going to hear is what is considered the smoking gun tape. When the impeachment inquiry into Nixon started to pick up, Congress demanded these secret recordings, and Nixon refused to give them up knowing what was on the tapes. The release of the tapes was ordered by the Supreme Court on July 24, 1974, in a case known as the United States versus Nixon. The court's decision was unanimous. The smoking gun tape is one of the 3 conversations he had with Haidman 6 days before the WaterGate break-in. The tapes prove that he ordered a cover-up of the WaterGate break-in. The smoking gun tape reveals that Nixon ordered the FBI to abandon its investigation of the break-in. After the release of the tape, the 11 Republicans on the Judiciary Committee who voted against impeachment charges said they would change their votes. It was clear that Nixon would be impeached and convicted in the Senate. So he resigned.
The way to handle this now is for us basis for doing it. Given this, he will then have the basis. He'll call Mark Felt in, and the two of them, and Mark Felt wants to cooperate because he's ambitious. They'll call them in and say, we've gotten the signal across the river to put the hold on this. And that'll fit rather well because the FBI agents who are working the case at this point feel that's what it is the CIA.
But they're tracing the money to them.
Well, they've traced to a name, but they haven't got to the guy yet.
There's money here.
Kent Dahlberg, Minnesota. He said he gave $25,000 in Minnesota. And the check went directly in to this guy, Parker.
Maybe he's,
That also was the end of presidents taping their conversations, at least that we know of, which is a shame. These are such great historical resources and a great teaching aid. And it's also a reminder that presidents are also human, whether it's complaining about furniture, calorie-filled desserts, or pants that are too tight. Yeah, that's right. You thought I wasn't gonna play it, didn't you?
The one that makes clothes?
Yes, sir. We're all together.
You all made me some real lightweight slacks. He just made up on his own, sent to me 3 or 4 months ago. It's a kind of a light brown and a light green, rather soft green and soft brown.
Yes,
now I need about 6 pairs for summer wear.
yes, sir.
I need about 6 pairs to wear around in the evening when I come in from work. And I can send you a pair. I want them 1/2 inch larger in the waist than they were before, except I want 2 or 3 inches of stuff left back in there so I can take them up. I vary 10 to 15 pounds a month.
All right, sir.
So leave me at least 2.5 to 3 inches in the back where I can let them out or take them up, and make these 1/2 inch bigger in the waist. Make the pockets at least 1 inch longer. My money and my knife and everything fall out. Wait just a minute. Hello?
Hello.
Now, another thing, the crotch down where your nuts hang is always a little too tight. So when you make them up, give me 1 inch that I can let out there, because they cut me. They're just like riding a wire fence. These are the best that I've had anywhere in the United States. But when I gain a little weight, they cut me under there. So leave me, you never do have much margin there. But see if you can't leave me about 1 inch from where the zipper ends, round under back to my bunghole.
All right, sir.
So I can let it out there if I need to. Now, be sure you got the best zippers in them. These are good that I have. And if you get those to me, I would sure be grateful.
Where would you like to send, please?
White House? I just sure will appreciate this. I need it more than anything. And now, you give this boy the address, because I'm running for a funeral, and give him address just how to dress these trousers. So we'll send them to you. And don't you get the measurements out of them and add 1/2 inch to the back. Give us 1 inch to the pockets and about 1 inch underneath so we can let them out.
In other words, you like just a little more stride in the crotch.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes, sir.
Okay, here he is.
Glad that you enjoyed that.
Anyways, this is a great reminder that presidents are also human. That doesn't mean we should give them any less criticism. But when studying history, I find it's often easier if you can relate to the person in which you're studying. So thanks for watching. Give it a like if you liked it. And remember to subscribe. We're only 10 subscribers away from 200, which is crazy. So help me out there, and also leave a comment down below. Which president's audio tapes did you think were the best? I will see you next time.